Perfect Bloom by Katy Haye. The roses in the royal gardens were in bloom. Prince Cassian could be sure of the fact because he woke to find a single delicate flower on the pillow beside him, almost brushing his nose. He took a deep breath filled with its sweetly floral scent and reached out to assure himself it wasn't a dream. His fingers met soft, velvety petals. The tips were a pure white, shading to a delicate lavender at its heart. "Guards!" Cassian pushed away the covers, facing the door. "Highness?" Cassian was relieved that it was Olaf who stepped through the door, his broad, gruff guard captain standing smartly to attention, while his gaze roved the room seeking anything out of place. His attention snagged on the rose Cassian was holding. The prince lifted it, confirming it was the reason he'd summoned his guard. "Was this a joke?" "A joke, Highness?" Olaf spoke as though he didn't know what the word meant. "I know you don't joke on duty. An initiation, perhaps. Instruct the new kid to place a rose on the prince's pillow while he sleeps. Pint of ale if you can manage it without waking him." Olaf frowned. His gaze darted around the room again, as though the rose-bringer might be lurking somewhere. "We're all too old for silly tricks," Olaf commented steadily, "especially while on duty." "Then we have a problem," Cassian muttered. "Perhaps. Do you suspect who might have left it?" Cassian cursed the blush he could feel creeping over his cheeks. "No." "A secret admirer?" "No." "Not the work of the Saldovian delegation?" His cheeks burned. "Doesn't seem like Prince Bartram's style, really," he said, as coolly as he could manage. That was the thing. He wanted romance and roses, intimate dinners for two, walks in the moonlight. It was beyond him to be enthusiastic about a marriage based on a trade deal between two countries. But if his suggested groom had been even slightly receptive, he could have found something to fulfill his romantic side. Instead, Bartram had received the gift of a bouquet from Cassian's garden on the day he arrived, with laughter and the comment, "Oh, please don't waste your time with this sort of nonsense. I'm a pragmatic man. Neither of us need wooing, do we, after all?" He hadn't waited for Cassian's reply, which is as well, because Cassian could neither have argued with a guest nor agreed. Olaf didn't notice his emotional crisis. The captain moved to the window, pushing it wide and leaning out. "I did say that having ivy growing on a wall adjacent to your window was a security risk," he turned, "as is sleeping with your window open." Cassian held the rose under his nose, breathing in deeply as he turned to face Olaf. "It was a warm night. I should boil to make your life easy." Olaf shut the window and turned, bulky arms folded over his broad chest. "You should boil to spare your mother the queen the distress of burying her beloved third son." "If they wanted to kill me, they missed a perfect chance," Cassian pointed out. "A rose isn't much of a weapon. They even removed the thorns." Olaf narrowed his eyes. "Thorough. They could have poisoned it." Cassian's fingers tightened, as though afraid Olaf would snatch it from him. "But too late if it were," he addressed Cassian calmly. "If it were poisoned, you'd be frothing at the mouth by now. I think the Queen can set aside her morning black for the time being." He sighed. "Any other admirers could be behind it." "An admirer is hardly likely to step forward when I'm on the brink of marriage to a neighbouring prince, are they?" He set the rose down on the bed beside him. It didn't smell as sweet suddenly. "Seems like the perfect time to step forward," Olaf stated. He turned his attention to security. "I'll get a gardener to cut down the ivy. That way you can still sleep with the window open." Cassian smiled, stood up, and stuck the rose in the pitcher of water kept at his bedside. "Get the curly-haired one to do it. I'll watch him work." "I'm not sure your husband-to-be would appreciate that." Cassian sighed. "Don't remind me." Olaf stepped into the gardens while the prince ate breakfast, and his safety was someone else's concern. He surveyed the ivy with a critical eye. Cassian loved his garden, but Olaf loved the prince's security more. The plant was as thick as his arm at the root, although the tendrils grew fine and delicate by the time they reached the window overhead. Whoever had snuck inside and left the rose must be small and light, nimble. But small people could be assassins too. Either way, the ivy had to go. He turned to find a gardener. Several were within sight. "Hey!" He used his commanding voice. 3 turned immediately. The one on the left had a head full of curly, bronze-tinted hair. He remembered Cassian's smile when he'd mentioned the curly-haired one. It was the first time in 4 days he'd seen the prince smile. "You, come here." The lad's eyes went wide. He swallowed hard, but obeyed the order. Ulf hadn't yet met a civilian who didn't obey that tone of voice. Ulf assessed the lad as he advanced. He barely reached his shoulder, and was a skinny slip of a thing. He glanced back at the ivy consideringly. "Sir?" The curly-haired gardener spoke quietly, but he met Ulf's gaze without evasion. He grasped a tendril of ivy and tugged. "This needs to go." "Go?" "Cut it down," Ulf confirmed. "Destroy it." The gardener swallowed. "Did the prince order that?" Ulf leaned over him, deliberately intimidating. "I order it." Give the lad his due, he didn't flinch. "The prince likes it," he insisted. Ulf leaned further. "And I like it when the prince is safe." "Course the prince is safe. Who would dare harm him?" Ulf straightened and set hands on hips. Still the lad didn't flinch. "Someone crept up that ivy into the prince's room last night. They might have murdered him, but thankfully they'd just left a flower behind." He waited. The gardener held his tongue, but Ulf detected a faint blush. "You look small enough to take on the job. Did the Zaldovian delegation bribe you to do it?" "No, I didn't do it for them." He clapped a hand over his mouth, but he'd already confirmed what Ulf suspected. "What in the world were you thinking? You could have fallen and broken your neck." "It would have been worth it," the lad declared, chin jutting. Ulf sighed. Spare him from overzealous youth. "The prince should know he's loved. The Zaldovians don't deserve him. He should be cherished, not treated like a bartering chip." "Lovelorn, overzealous youth. Marvellous. Thinking of a move into politics, are you?" "Don't mock me." "I'm not mocking you. He broke off and reassessed the height up to the window. "I'm impressed by your dedication. I wish everyone in the palace had your loyalty." "I love the prince," the gardener said mutinously. "You barely know the man." "I know enough. He's a dear, kind soul. He should be showered with roses and gilded in starlight and—" "That'll do. What's your name, lad?" "Cassian." "Cassian?" "I was born a month after the prince. My parents liked the name. My friends call me Cass," he offered. "Cass. I suppose it could be worse. Cut down this ivy, Cass." "But—" "Cut it down. Do you want the prince to be murdered in his bed?" "No, of course—" "Cut it down. Then pick a dozen roses and bring them to the prince's room." Cass opened his mouth, but Ulf had wasted enough time already. "That's an order." "Yes, sir." Bartram, Prince of Zaldovia, asked to spend the morning riding with Cassian, because of course he did. The Zaldovians had been visiting for 5 days, 4 of which had been spent riding with the prince he was supposed to eventually marry. Cassian didn't object per se. Getting to know each other was an excellent objective. It was just that he preferred to ride when he had somewhere to go. Making his ass sore, and not in a good way, by ambling around the countryside for hours on end, wasn't a hobby he could find any enthusiasm for. Bartram, thus far, was short on words and long on action. He appeared happy to spend all day on horseback, with the occasional break to shoot a few arrows and lament that he hadn't brought his hawk with him. Cassian wanted to be hospitable, of course he did, but his heart sank to imagine that this was what his life would be like for the next 50 years. He understood the importance of strengthening trade with Zaldovia. He just wished he didn't have to sacrifice any chance at happiness to do so. He pulled on his jacket and headed towards the stables. He was being melodramatic. He could be happy with Bartram. Just because he had no idea how to manage it didn't mean it wasn't possible. He just had to find a way. "It's a beautiful day for a ride," Bartram declared with a toothy grin when Cassian stepped into sight. Cassian nodded and smiled in a manner he hoped indicated agreement, without having to speak an outright lie. It was a beautiful day to sit in the garden with a book, but that wasn't available. His own mare was led out of the stable, saddled and bridled. For the sake of his guest, he swung into the saddle. "I thought we might ride alongside the river," Bartram declared. "By all means." Cassian thought he should probably enforce his personality more strongly, but he felt like he'd lost the chance. As every other day, Bartram would do what he pleased, while Cassian was simply along, quite literally, for the ride. At least it was a pleasant day, and the scenery was beautiful. "I thought it might be valuable to have a candid conversation," Bartram said, as they slowed to a walk where the broad river twisted slowly through the countryside. That sounded ominous. Cassian abruptly remembered Olaf asking if the rose might be the work of the Zaldovian delegation. His heart lurched at the idea that Bartram might be about to smack him in the face with a declaration of undying love. His mouth was too dry to speak, but he managed a croak that he hoped Bartram read as invitation to continue. "Do you actually want to marry me?" Bartram asked. Cassian blinked. That was the whole purpose of the Zaldovian visit. He should have a diplomatic answer prepared. He did have a diplomatic answer prepared. He just had no idea where he'd left it. "Because I feel as though, since each of us would be happier married to a man, our families have decided they might as well throw us together, without any regard for which man we might be happy to marry." His toothy grin remained firmly in place. "Or have I misjudged the matter?" Realising salvation might just be wandering clumsily into view, Cassian finally found his voice. "That sums up my feelings perfectly." He took a deep breath and steeled himself to be honest. "I wish no insult to you, but I fear we aren't a brilliant fit." Bartram laughed. "Very diplomatically put. Excellent. Let's put an end to this, shall we? I'll convey my sentiments to my people, you convey your sentiments to yours, and we'll leave as soon as can be arranged. No hard feelings. I'm sure we can manage a trade deal, even if we don't have a marriage to back it up." He tugged on the reins and his horse came to a halt. "Shall we return to the palace?" "I'd be grateful if we did," Cassian said frankly. Cassian left his father's office and headed to his room. That had gone surprisingly well. At least, he would prefer if his mother hadn't wept at the thought that he'd die loveless and alone. She hadn't been consoled that at least he wouldn't die loveless with Bartram. But finally, he was off the hook as far as the Zaldovians went. He was almost dizzy with relief. Or perhaps it was the flowers making his head spin. "Olaf, what happened?" His room looked like a florist's shop. "Highness?" He took a deep breath filled with the scent of roses and turned to his guard captain. "The flowers. Did you ask the gardeners to ensure there'd be no blooms left for my nighttime visitor?" "I thought some flowers might cheer you up. The gardener went a little over the top." "Cheering up? I'm not sad." Olaf's mouth twitched. "The ivy's gone, and you didn't get the chance to see the curly-haired gardener at work." "Ah, that was a loss, but there would be other chances to watch the cute gardener at his work. Well, I'll get over my disappointment, I'm sure." "I understand tonight's banquet was cancelled." "Yes, no big announcement to make." Olaf doubtless already knew. The man had a knack of knowing what was going on around the palace, despite rarely stepping away from his post. "I ordered dinner for you in the garden." Cassian smiled. "Will I be safe? What if I'm accosted by more flower-wielding would-be assassins?" "I've scoped out the place. You'll be safe." Cassian glanced around his room. It was beautiful, and he loved the flowers, but Olaf was right. Not that he'd tell the man and swell his head. He wanted to be outside, breathing in the fresh air and watching the sunset while he appreciated his lucky escape. "Very well. I'll go and eat my feelings about losing the chance to see the cute gardener get sweaty and dishevelled. Don't wait up." It was later than he'd thought. Dusk was already gathering as Cassian stepped outside. The sky was painted shades of pink and gold, fading to navy. When he breathed in, he smelled something as lovely as the roses, although quite different. Honeysuckle, perhaps. The cute curly-haired gardener would know. A shame the man was certainly off duty by now. Cassian glanced aside where a brown stump was all that was left of the ivy. He deserved his rest after a hard day's work. Cassian rounded the corner into the garden proper, and his breath caught. His route was marked with lanterns set at the edge of the path. They wound past the rose garden to the bower in the corner. A fire burned brightly in a brazier set beside the bench, which was decked about with cushions. A table bore numerous plates and bowls. He'd be very surprised if they didn't contain his favourite things to eat. Someone had gone to a great deal of trouble to arrange all this. How upset did Olaf think he'd be? A shadow shifted and his attention sharpened. A slim, curly-haired figure loitered beside the bower. The gardener wasn't sweaty and dishevelled, but he looked equally adorable in what was clearly his Sabbath best, curls gleaming in the light of the lanterns hanging in the tree overhead. Oh, he was having words with Olaf about this, just as soon as he decided whether he was going to sack the man or promote him. Well, he wasn't about to throw all this effort away, and he was hungry. Cassian strode slowly down the path, enjoying the view every step. "Is it honeysuckle I can smell?" he asked as he drew near the bower. "That's right, Highness." The gardener smiled as bright as the stars that shone overhead. He threw out a hand indicating spidery flowers growing over the bower. "Their scent is strongest at night." Cassian admired shining grey eyes and flawless skin, then cleared his throat. "I believe I have you to thank for the roses. They're beautiful." "Oh, there's no need for thanks. That's my job." Cassian smiled. "Do I have any blooms left on the bushes?" Yes, Highness. There are lots of buds. Actually, roses benefit." Cassian waved a hand. "I was teasing. It wouldn't matter if you'd destroyed the plants, would it? You're exactly the man to nurse them back to health." The gardener blinked, throat bobbing nervously. This wasn't going how Cassian had planned. Not that he'd planned. Perhaps that was the problem. Would you like something to eat, Highness?" The gardener indicated the overflowing buffet. "A glass of wine, perhaps?" Cassian sat down with a sigh. "A glass of wine would be lovely, thank you." He took a deep breath and tried to recall some of the sparkling repartee he'd practised for the Zaldovian delegation, before learning his intended husband had the soul of a brick. A slim hand offered his wine. Cassian accepted the glass and took a sip. The gardener hovered awkwardly. Cassian sighed again. It wasn't like Ulf to judge people so badly, but this was not his best idea. "Look, I appreciate the trouble you've gone to. I didn't mean to make you awkward. You don't need to wait on me." The gardener blinked. His slim throat bobbed. "As you wish, Highness. I'll leave and find someone else if you don't want to be served by me." Cassian's stomach dropped. "No, I didn't mean—" He took a breath, and what he actually wanted settled behind his ribs. "Actually, you're right. I don't want you to serve me." Slim shoulders slumped, and Cassian's heart soared, knowing he wasn't done yet. "I'd like you to sit with me, so we can enjoy the meal together and talk." He looked up, eyes wide. "Talk, Highness?" Cassian smiled. Nothing was going to remove his grin right now. "Yes, you do talk. I've heard you. No going back now." His cute gardener swallowed again. Cassian had a sudden urge to kiss the apples of his cheeks where the rosy blush was strongest. "Yes, I talk, Highness. I just meant, what are we to talk about? I fear we don't have much in common." "Anything. Everything," Cassian declared. He sat back and patted the couch beside him. "I nearly married a man I knew nothing about. I don't intend to make the same mistake twice." The gardener swallowed again, eyes wide. "Forgive me, I'm getting ahead of myself. I don't want to put either of us under any pressure. Let's start with small talk. What's your name?" Grey eyes gleamed as his companion smiled, relaxing for the first time. He took the place beside Cassian on the bench. "You might not believe this, but my friends call me Cass." Cassian blinked, then laughed. "Cass? That's perfect. See, we have something in common already." Cass laughed, eyes sparkling. Cassian's heart swelled. Somewhere in the garden, a nightingale sang. That was A Perfect Bloom by Katy Haye. Thanks for listening. A new story is posted up every Friday. Click subscribe if you want to be notified when the next one is up.